Welcome back to Yield Today with Dallin Candland. I'm here with Mike Kaeding, the CEO of Norhart. We're just going to talk about his journey, building that, his vision, how that's grown, and the journey so far. So thank you so much for coming, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were going to have this interview like a week ago, and then I think it was KABC reached out and was like, hey, we want to interview or whatever. And you're like, hey, sorry, I can't do it today. And it's like, whatever, man, you go do your thing. Like it was good timing. This is great timing what we're doing now. So how did that go?
It was great. That was ABC in Los Angeles. It's been fun getting on some of those really larger platforms.
I mean, that's kind of how it goes, right? Like once you get into one of those, then you kind of it kind of
That's
escalates from there. That's cool.
right. It's a lot of work to make it happen. It just doesn't magically appear. But as you build that up, it's amazing to have reporters start reaching out to you and saying, "Hey, I got to get you on. I got a big story I want you to talk about." And then you're on air talking about these big stories. You become their trusted expert. It's hard to become that, but once you are, it's powerful.
Yeah. It's what a lot of people have kind of spoken to is like once you get more clarity and confidence in what you're speaking, and we'll get into Norhart, but like as you get more confidence in that and also yourself, people are drawn to that. And it just sometimes those opportunities will just flow to you, for all the work you put in.
Exactly. That's right.
That's cool. So break it down for us with Norhart. Did it start? It probably started a different way. And I know that it was started as a family venture. So kind of bring us back to that.
Yeah, so to take a quick step back, Norhart, what we do is we design, build, and rent apartments. And really what we're focused on is driving down the cost of that construction, of building that housing. Right now, we're achieving about a 20% reduction in those costs, but we believe eventually we can get a 50% reduction. But imagine what that means. That means someday your rent could be half, or your mortgage payment could be half. And that's what we're working to do. We want to solve America's housing affordability crisis. And so to get to your question, my parents started the business. It was very small. In fact, there was a point we lost everything, and my dad was actually kidnapped. Crazy story. We clawed our way back out of that. And growing up, I remember taking family trips, family outings to the local hardware store. We'd fill up on carts full of materials, head on back to the properties, and we'd be building these really small apartment buildings. And then as I grew up, I went off to college and I wanted nothing to do with the family business because I didn't want people to think it was given to me. So I really wrestled with my own ego, getting past that. But after college, I joined the business full time, which was great. And then within a couple of years, my dad unexpectedly passed away. And so there was this big shift and change within myself and within the business. And we had a crossroads of what do we do from here? But we've since taken it and grown it substantially since then.
It's beautiful. And the kidnapping, it just kind of I wasn't there or anything like that. This is my first time hearing about this, but what flew through my mind's eye was just like somebody working really hard on this and then just, and it just was sort of like a lot of our lives are like movies, even if it hasn't, even if nobody's made it, like it's still probably worthy of movie of some kind. Yeah. Was he just doing his thing? And what do you think could have prevented that, if anything?
Yeah. So my dad during that time, this is before they really started on the apartments. They tried working with this uh, guy named Pancho. My mom was really into Special Olympics. Pancho came to Minnesota because of this time, the Special Olympics, like their major event was happening in Minnesota. And my parents helped this family from Peru. His name is Pancho, and his kids get into the Special Olympics. We gave them a place to stay. We fed them. They became good friends. And over time, over the course of like a year, they decided to get into business together. So the idea was that my dad was going to purchase buses, used buses here in the United States, bring them down to Peru, so to help establish a way for the citizens of Peru to get around their city, right? So it was commuter system they were building up in the city, which is all fantastic. And then the idea was the fares, part of that money would go back to my dad to pay off the buses. And for the first few months, this was going along well. And then over time, Pancho decided to stop sending the money to my dad. My dad not that well. I mean, he didn't really have that much money. He had his big loans for him or like $200,000. Like, how was he going to get past all this? And so it ended up going to Peruvian Supreme Court. Pretty crazy story there. But one of the trips down there, my dad was walking along the beach, and a couple of people came up beside, or a person came up beside my dad, asked him questions about what is it like in America, very excited about America, and then ran off. And then right after that, two uniformed police officers came up to him and said, you know, that guy you've been talking to, he's a drug dealer. And now we want to question you about your relation to these drugs. And so they like, you have to come with us. But the moment that he got into the car, he realized these weren't real police officers. There were people basically kidnapping him. Small car. They were headed actually to the bad part of town. He knew never to go. And as they were headed down that route, he started to formulate a plan in his mind. How is he going to escape this? So he's showing them that he has no money on him at the time, making them less interested in him. It was a small car. There's two people in the front seat, two people in the back seat, one on each side of him. And one thing he learned through some earlier experiences is that you have about a second, 1 second, before somebody knows what's actually going on around them. So he formulated this plan as they were slowing down to the next stoplight. Once they get down to 15 miles an hour, he was going to reach out, which he did. He reached out, grabbed the handle on the front door, which is the only way to get out on the passenger side, open the door and let the momentum of the car slowing down, open up that door and actually pull him out of the car in about a second. And that was enough time for him to get out. And he actually ran backwards through traffic to get away from that situation. So yeah, there's crazy moments in all of our lives, and it's how we deal with it that matter.
Yeah, that's wild. And there is safety and there is like possibility in those tiny little increments. You know, I think of I think it was Man's Search for Meaning. And it's like there's that gap between you know,
stimulus and response.
Exactly. And in the between, that is where man's power lies. So
yeah,
that's cool. I really appreciate you breaking that down. And just yeah, I have a really wonderful dad, you know, that has paved the way for me. And, you know, he said that his dream is so that his kids' dreams can come true, you know, and I really admire that. And yeah, something for the way your dad acted in that moment. And yeah, just thankful, yeah, for what he did for you. That's a beautiful thing.
It's such an incredible dream of your dad to want his kids' dreams to come true. That is so powerful. You have an amazing dad who has that dream for you.
Yeah, he's always been very, very good about putting the right books in my hands at the right time, it seems like. And yeah, he loves his life. I remember I call it a pivotal conversation now, you know, last year or it was around last year, and we were just talking and I was like, Dad, you know, I know you're working really hard at this job and it's not like the best job in the world. It's pretty good. And I was like, you know, isn't there something else you'd like to do or something? He's like, dude, I love my life. You know, like I love being able to work and then getting home and I can just hang out with the family. And I love helping my kids out. And that's his thing. It's like, I ultimately wouldn't change a ton from how things are. And I learned a lot in that moment about knowing how it's so important to know like what you want. Like for me, that will never jive ever. Like I am always going to be doing other stuff. And, you know, even walking up the stairs before this interview, I had this like poem coming to mind. I was like, okay, we got to get this written. And so I started writing that before we jumped on here. And I'm always going to be building something of some sort, I'm sure, for a long time. And so we're different in that way, but
I love the wisdom in what your dad's pointing out, because really the truth in life, and I've seen this in myself, is that we can choose to be happy or we can choose not to be happy. We think that all of these outside influences is what's causing us to feel unhappy. But what I've learned, it's how we choose to look at the world and how we choose to speak to ourselves. It becomes how we end up feeling. You mentioned that quote, the space between stimulus and response, or there's a space between that where it's our power to choose. But I think what's so powerful in that moment, we can choose a different course of action. And in that choice results eventually in how we feel. You know, for my days, they're so insanely busy and there's stresses like, I mean, we run a $200 million company, right? So there's insane stresses that go on with that. And I've really learned to just appreciate even the little things, like just going to bed and getting to lay down in a comfy, cozy, warm place. That's become now for me a moment of joy, and such a basic moment of joy. But when you change your perspective of that, it can bring you that feeling of joy and happiness.
Yeah, we talked about it a tiny bit, how yesterday, like right now, I don't have a job. I've looked around for
Yeah.
jobs and whatever. And yesterday I got off this interview with this lady and I was just feeling full of thoughts and whatever. And so I was like, I'm going to go on a walk instead of filling myself with more stuff. And saw this guy who's working and I was like, hey, do you need help? And he's like, dude, would you really help me? Like, apparently he had some guys who helped him that didn't stick around for very long. Like, we'll help you a little bit and then we'll take your money. Like, we'll take some money that you'll give us and then we'll leave. And a lot of it was left undone. And I was like, I'll help out a little bit. And I was wearing flip-flops. So I went back and got my shoes and went to work with that. And it was, it was really fun helping out in that way. But yeah, that just, just came up out of nowhere. And I didn't have to, that experience, like, more or less was there for me. I didn't have to be upset. It was just there and I enjoyed it. I got to be there and enjoy the moment. And it was just it was a good time. But yeah, there's no point about getting upset about things outside of my control, because it's outside of my control. I can't really do much, but there's things I do have control over. One of them is being kind to people. One of those other ones is about what you were saying about appreciating these things. And when we were driving back, like, he took me out to dinner, like, he treated me like a king, man. Like, after all of that, I got in bed and I was out almost like that. And like the last couple of days, I haven't really slept super great, but last night was like, it was it. And then it's like, if we can get closer to that, that's a beautiful thing. But yeah, I'll remember that, like, treasure that sleep time.
I love it.
Yeah. So I'm curious with Norhart, with helping out with the apartments and stuff, how exactly are you reducing a lot of the costs and still keeping the profits?
Yeah. So when you look at many industries like manufacturing, for example, they've improved labor productivity by 760% over the past 60 years. It's incredible. Agriculture has improved it by 1,500%. I think the overall economy has improved by 230%. Do you have any guess of what the world of construction has done?
800%.
Nothing. It's actually nothing.
Oh,
Well, 10%, but basically nothing. There's
wow.
been no real innovation in the space that improves the cost. And so what we're doing is we're just learning from these other industries that have already figured things out and applying what they've learned into our own. To give you some examples, some flavor of this, in the world of construction, typically your owner is a different company than your general contractor coordinating construction, who's different than your developer, who's different than your subcontractors, who's different from your electrician, your plumber, your HVAC, right? They're all different companies. So if a car company were to produce, or a construction company were to produce cars, you have a different company installing the windshield, a different company installing the door, and a different company installing the wheel. And then, of course, the wheel company, they would call you up and say, hey, I'm so sorry. We're actually delayed and we won't be out there for the next 2 weeks. Your line would be shut down for that entire time. And when they did come out, they would be irate because they could only work on one car at a time. So it's a fundamental problem with the industry. We brought all the work under one roof, but then that started unlocking treasures. And one example is the assembly line. So simple, right? It revolutionized manufacturing, but how the heck can you actually apply the assembly line to construction? Well, you can't take a building and drive it down a line. That's correct. But what you can do is you can take the person and move them through the building. And so right now, every team shifts one unit every 5 hours. If you look at the end of our building, every 5 hours, we have a brand new apartment unit completed. And that one technique takes a building that may have taken 15 months and drives it down to 9. The truth is there's a lot of little things like that that the team is working to solve.
Construction is this crazy industry and this crazy conglomeration, it was this crazy thing of all these different things. I did an internship actually with a startup that was trying to help in the construction company called Elucent in the construction industry. And, they had like this cloud-based thing where you could track all these things better. And it was crazy. I was trying to understand it because we needed to, have some clarity and stuff as we spoke and as we, as we shared things about the product and whatever. And it was still a lot of it was over my head, man. It was like, this person needs to know this is okay before he does this. And then we need to make sure that this person, it was really funny, especially when we did these videos where we were all in different parts because this internship was mostly remote. Like we never really met the people in person. And then it's like, okay, Dallin, you click this, and then this person, you click this, and then we do it again, but make it look like we all knew what we were doing. So it was like you could do it as a video, and good times, man.
Oh my gosh, you're right. The world of construction is so complex. I mean, you bring a bunch of people together to work on one building and then scatter them to the wind, right? So you bring a whole new team more or less every time. And the reality is complexity is very easy to get, but simplicity is super hard. And unless you've got some kind of consistency of regular projects and regular things in line, there's no real incentive to spend all the time and energy into building it simple because it doesn't pay off. Everyone's scattered back to the wind.
Yeah, I think it was, who was it? Somebody said simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. I'm pretty sure it's like Leonardo da Vinci or something like that. And it's that is such a powerful thing. And so how do you do that? How do you do that, Mike? How do you keep your life simple with, people calling you left and right? You're still doing podcasts for people that are, still we're all in different stages, but yet you are still going on all those stages. How are you doing all this?
So how to keep things simple. So it depends on what sphere you're looking at. In the world of construction, there's techniques we use there. For myself, which is what you asked, is that you need to understand what your vision is for your life, right? So I think that's the first thing. What's the purpose of the organization? What's the mission? What's the vision? What's the values? For me, it's that I want to make some kind of meaningful, positive impact on the world, right? I've always wanted to do that since I was younger. And so it's taken me a while to understand how I can have that kind of impact. And I've since learned that I think we can do it by solving housing affordability. So that becomes sort of my North Star. That's what I focus on. Then for me and my role in the business, I kind of break it down to 3 core strategies. What are the 3 things I wake up today that I help solve that I know that I've done well for our business? And the first is all about the team. I have learned this so deeply that the most important thing you can do right as a leader is bring on the right people, create the right culture. That does not happen by accident. In fact, if you're not proactively putting the time and energy into it, you are not getting the kind of culture that you need to be successful. So that's where the bulk of my energy goes into. The other one is disrupting the construction industry. So it's discovering, finding, developing out new ways to help the team to move the industry forward. And then the last is about creating a magical experience for our residents. And so those are the 3 things I think very regular about. And I would say the one additional thing I probably tack onto that is special projects. And so every quarter or so, we recognize what is like a big, hairy problem we have in the organization that needs my energy to help push forward. And that becomes the special project that I work on as well.
It's cool because you could start from any level of capability and capacity and just kind of commit to something like that. And you will find yourself developing the capacity over time. And the beautiful thing with a vision too, is it's elastic. And so as new technologies and stuff come out, your vision's like, yeah, I love this. And it's like a pool that's already open. You just dive right in, as opposed to a pool that's just, it's like, sorry, we're waiting for the perfect opportunity or something. It's like, all right, man, I'll just stay out here and heat up.
Yeah, I was coaching. You're exactly right. I was coaching someone this week, and she was, because I've been the chairman of one of the largest chambers in the state, but she was saying, "Hey, I want to get very involved in being a chamber member. I think what you did is become a chairman. I want to follow that same route. Can I get some insight on how to do that?" I said, "I'd be happy to. Lay it all out for you. It's not that hard to become that kind of level." But I started it with, what is your purpose? What is your vision for your life? And she spelled out to me and said, I want to be the Elon Musk of like medical devices, of this kind of medical device stuff that she's working on. And she's brilliant. And I think she has a good shot of doing that. And I said, okay, let's back that up. If that's your end goal, how does becoming a chamber chairman actually help you to that? Well, I don't know, it sounds cool. Said, are there people in the chamber that understand medical devices? At least in the chambers I'm part of, not really, right? Are they going to be able to fund and bring you a lot of dollars? You know, these are people, probably business owners, that are looking for dollars themselves, and they're not going to be able to invest necessarily in what you're doing. And then we started strategizing, realizing that there were other opportunities, and we kind of laid out a plan for her that would actually help her reach her vision. But unless you set that vision first, you start going down miscellaneous random paths that are actually helping you forward. It's a little bit like, you know, what's the difference between a river and like a pond? A pond, the water is moving everywhere out, wherever it goes. But if you put banks to a pond, you now have a river. It's moving powerfully in one direction. And that's really what you want for your life, if you want your life to be successful.
Yeah, it's a mind-blowing thought, because I actually ran by a pond and I had the thought, man, that is a stagnant, kind of ugly, it's basically a swamp at this point,
Yeah.
you know? And that is the key. It's like, if it's moving really quickly and whatever, and there's some way to do exactly what you just said, then you can work from there, you know?
I love it.
Yeah. I love a lot of the stuff you're sharing as well. So talk a little bit about your family, the organization of that. Like, how does this funnel into that? How do you help out with them?
Family is amazing. You know, I couldn't be doing what I'm doing without the wife and kids that I have. My wife is so understanding, more than I deserve, because in order to achieve the kind of things that we're trying to do, it takes a lot of time, energy actually make happen. But I think there's some things though that I don't compromise on. One is that even though I work crazy hours, like 70 hours for me is like an easy average week. The painful weeks are like 100 or 110 hours. That's where it gets a little rough. But I always make sure to come home same time every day. And no matter if it's a tough day or not, it is full of energy. I'm excited to see my kids, fully engaged with them. We have dinner, put them to bed. And they are amazing. And kind of a fun aside is that my daughter really wanted to create a YouTube channel, right? And so I kind of put it off. And she was so persistent, said, okay, fine, we're going to grab a camera. Let's film this. And we filmed the first episode. And that was a really fun kind of bonding activity for the two of us. But what was neat is I started to realize, because that started growing for us, that this is an opportunity to help in the business side as well, because people get to see my life like authentically with my children. And so they get to see a different piece of this. They become more comfortable possibly investing in our business. They get to better know who we are. And so there became this really interesting synergy between a really fun bonding activity with my kids and something that's actually helping the business. So those are the sorts of things I look for in life. How do I bridge those two worlds together as much as I possibly can?
I love that. Yeah. And it's interesting too, because we weren't going into it. It's like, okay, honey, let's see how we can make this work with my business or something. Let's make sure we say, like, check out the Norhart website or something or whatever, you know. It's just something that just came along, just kind of the piece fell into place more or less, and it made more sense over time. How long has that been going? I'm curious.
We're only at like 3 or 4 months. It's fairly new, but it's been fun watching that really start to take off.
It's so cool to see any of that, even if you've had YouTube channels and you start a new one, or I imagine if you have a business and you start a new one, it's cool to see that grow, because it's its own individual thing, like a child in a way.
Yes. There's so much to it.
That's cool. What would you say has been one of like the biggest wins, like one of the biggest things? It could be personal or a business or anything like that. One of the biggest wins that got you really like excited about, made you want to do like a touchdown dance or something?
We've had a lot of big failures and a lot of big wins. I would say probably specifically, if I want to help your audience, I think one of the biggest things that totally changed the game for us was recognizing the importance of employees. And every business, everyone says, yeah, employee, it was important. But there's a difference between the ones that just say that and really take extreme action to make that reality. See, what I've learned is that the best people are way, way better than the average by 2 to 5 to 10 times as much. And so we've focused on hiring the very, very best. To give you some sense of this, we actually fly people in from other states to come work during the week, and we fly them home. One of our employees, Steve Jobs announces the iPhone in 2007. This employee walks off stage and Steve Jobs walks off stage and our employee walks on that same stage following Steve Jobs' announcement of the first iPhone. It's that kind of caliber of people. And when you bring those kind of people together, they change things. They unlock doors for you that you didn't know could be unlocked. And so, oftentimes what I get back from business leaders I'm talking to is like, Mike, that's really expensive. I can't afford that. And the truth is, they are expensive, right? We pay top of market for those kind of caliber of people. But what I have found is because they're so much more productive, when you look at it on a cost per unit produced, those people are actually your least expensive. And so the people say they can't afford to hire them, but I say you can't afford not to. And here's to get to the answer to your question. Once we made that change, we actually went through our whole company. We let about half the people go. We rehired those teams in place. And once we made that change, we went from growing at about 10% a year to nearly doubling every single year. Incredible change within the organization.
So there's sounds like there's different phases of Norhart. So
Yeah.
when did it like officially start? And then when would you say is it really picked up, I guess? And then I guess where do you see it in the future?
Yeah, so my parents originally started the business in the mid 90s. I joined on around 2009. And then my dad passed away within a few years after that. So 2009, we were probably, we were less than 100 units. And then I joined on, and then I didn't really know what I was doing, right? I was inexperienced. We were still figuring things out. Part of the problem with our staff at the time is I used temp labor services to find the people we were looking for. And I thought, even though we got rid of 99% of people that came through, I thought we could find the best of the temp labor. Well, that's not the best of the best. The best people are looking for jobs or not even looking for jobs. So that's a side rabbit hole we could go down. But after joining, we grew to maybe or after it was me, just me after my dad passed away, we probably grew to about 200 or so. And it took a few years. And then after that, once we made that shift, we grew to, 400 to, 800. I think we're past, around 1,000 now. So it started taking off.
It's beautiful. Yeah, I know we don't have a ton more time, so I'm curious, like probably the best thing for the listeners would be to like kind of follow your journey, like follow you on LinkedIn or something like that. But what would you think would be best for them to do? And if there's any other wisdom you wanted to shed on us?
Yeah. You can learn more about us by visiting our website, norhart.com. That's NORHART.com. On there, you can see a few different shows that we have. And I think probably the most interesting one is Zero to Unicorn. It's about the journey of small business growing to billion-dollar scale. And what is that journey really like? The good, the bad, and the ugly. In season 1, we cover our story, but we're now shifting into season 2. We're starting to look at the stories of others. And so one of the exciting guests I'm actually recording with this week is Michael Usman, who is the originator and executive producer of Batman, Lego movies, a number of other big movies that you've heard. But it took him 10 years of hard work, tenacity, and energy to get people to take him seriously enough to make the Batman movies in the first place. So his story is really phenomenal, and I'm excited to share it with the world as that podcast comes out over the next few weeks.
Yeah, 10 years is kind of what I've heard multiple times. The podcast hits 4 years in August. So it's been fun. It's a fun journey. You give yourself some time, it's interesting because there's things like, there's things I like about this, things I don't so much like about this, but it's a journey. But there's definitely been a lot of people have like cheered me on and stuff. And, I'm sure you've had that with Norhart. And I think that's so beautiful, whether it's inside with the employees or outside with the people, and then inside with you, like with cheering it on and all the things you do. So yeah, it's just amazing, Mike. Amazing to talk to you.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Well, keep up the great work, and we'll definitely have links to all the stuff you said in the show notes. And is there any like last quote or anything like that that just really has helped you out or that you keep top of mind?
For me, my dad died at a young age. And it reminded me how short life really is. We only have about 5,000 weeks to live here on earth. And so for me, it's all been about making a positive impact. But the quote I love is from Steve Jobs, which is simply, let's make a dent in the universe.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to end it. And I think you're doing that. And you have other people to help you with making that dent too. So I celebrate you, Mike, and what you've done. And thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You got it.